Although I finished my bike tours last season with a ride of the OTET, Ohio to Erie Trail, I returned to begin this year's riding season. This year would be different though, not only because every ride is different, but this one would be with my father. We would explore alternatives to the camping sites I usually use, and we were going to use different cycling styles. I on my Surly Midnight Special and my father of 80 on his Aventon e-bike. After unloading the bikes in downtown Cincinnati, we gathered at the river. We planned for the first day to be about 66 miles into Xenia, where we would stay at an Airbnb. More specifically, it was an Airbnb made up of a few old Airstream trailers. This was the furthest my father would have traveled in one day on his bike. The weather forecasters were calling for storms, or at least heavy rain, for several days of the ride. We were both old enough to know that you can't trust the weather forecasters or the weather apps. While we were prepared, we were optimistic we'd at least have some dry days, or at least be able to time our ride in between the rain. People on e-bikes are as varied as people on regular bikes. You get those who haven't been on trails before and don't know etiquette. You get those that lay on the throttle instead of pedaling. And then there are those like my father who do all of the pedaling, but just get a little bit of extra strength from the battery. Bike touring is also not just a matter of the legs, but being on the bike for hours can cause soreness and numbness to the hands and wrists, neck, posterior, feet. An e-bike was not going to eliminate those risks any more than it was going to keep my father dry during the storms. During the first day, I had an equipment failure of a jockey wheel that froze. I removed it and it fell to pieces in my hand. I put it back together, but it seemed strange to me that there were only 4 ball bearings left. I didn't think that could be right, so while it worked, I ordered a replacement to be delivered to an upcoming hotel stay. We pulled into Loveland, where we stopped for a bite to eat and something cold to drink. All of my rides have been solo, except for doing the Gap last year with my father and once before with my son Alex. My father chose the same strategy as Alex, letting me ride ahead within sight, but allowing enough space so that we were each on our own journey, meeting up for breaks throughout the day. We were on the same page as far as how often to break, though I preferred longer breaks. Enough time to sometimes lay down on a picnic table and let the blood pump through my feet, listening to the wind in the trees and feeling the sun dry my face. But we worked it out. For me, these vacations I take a few times a year are about riding the bike, but also about enjoying and taking in what's around me. The weather and the ride were just perfect this first day. Nearing Xenia, we turned onto Hedges Road to go to the Rustic Retreat Airbnb. It was a unique and pleasant stay. It was made up of a few restored Airstream trailers. The area was manicured, each with an outside area providing tables, showers, and fire pits. For the second day, we were up early and out by 8 a.m. The sky was clear and our bodies had recovered. It was to be a warm, sunny day in the 80s. We planned to ride 62 miles to Columbus. We started with a ride into Xenia for breakfast, stopping at the One Bistro.
Hi. Are you getting coffee? Hi. Good, how are you doing?
The restaurant seemed to be filled with volunteers, and they encouraged donating to help others in need of their own meals. At Cedarville, we stopped for a quick break at the replica of Thoreau's cabin. There were not as many people on the trail initially, but we did see some bikepackers. Recumbents, too. South Charleston is one of my favorite places to stop, so we did. In London, there were several other cyclists filling their water bottles. We saw more riders as the day went on. This day of the trail is smooth and straight riding. Many farm fields to drive past, and some rivers to cross. The Darby Creek Metro Park is a signal to me that the nature of the trail is about to change. After riding the gravel through the park, the trail would start to become more urban. There were several people on the trail at this point, riding, walking, gathering, resting. The bridges into Columbus always provide great views of nature flowing through the city. Although I had previously stayed at the Red Roof Inn in Columbus, this time we stayed at the Sonesta. It cost a little more, but it was cleaner, friendlier, and it had a very nice restaurant. The check-in was easy too. The walk to my room after exiting the elevator was not a short one. It winded through halls, twists and turns. until finally I found my place to rest.
So I think we'll be fine. We got 7 hours and 50 minutes.
For the third day, we were once again out by 8 a.m., starting on the city streets to get to the trail. We planned to ride about 50 miles to Mount Vernon. The trails out of Columbus were pleasantly smooth and clean. One of the several highlights of the OTET for me are the winding trails crisscrossing the Alum Creek. This was going to be another nice, sunny, warm day. We took in the scenery as we chugged along. Bike riding is often compared to flying, which often seems just about right. It has freedom and flow. But it is often chugging along like Thomas, though being in the place and the weather and the now that is what it is. Alive, breathing, and pedaling. After about 13 miles riding north of Columbus, we came to the Waffle House, one of my favorites for both food and entertainment. Although a server might have rolled her eyes at us, it was good food and a good stop. As we rode, we found more and more people along the trail. Although the weather was wonderful, strong storms were forecast for the evening, so we kept an eye on the time. In the description of this video, I've placed information and links regarding the more important gear we used, of the places we stayed and ate, and of the planning resources for doing the trail yourself. After arriving in Centerburg, the halfway point of the trail, several people from different groups rode in and stopped, including a woman inline skating and a group of bike tourists on their way from Cleveland to Cincinnati. We made it to Mount Vernon about 90 minutes before the storms would come through. We stayed at the Comfort Inn on the trail, where there was an especially polite young man working the front register, and the rooms were nice and clean. On the fourth day, we were up by 6 a.m. and checked out the pool area that was surrounded by at least 35 bikes, many electric, of Amish people who had gathered at the hotel. During breakfast, we monitored the weather that was calling for chances of rain. The ride started cooler, overcast, with the roads and trails wet from the storm that had come through the evening before. While there were some sprinkles during our 56-mile ride to the bus stop Cozy Country Cottage Airbnb in Apple Creek, the rain mainly held off. The trail smelled of rain, and we were joined by squirrels, birds, suicidal chipmunks, snakes, and a large turtle. It was Memorial Day, and people in some of the towns were lined up for parades. There was a couple bike touring in our same direction, who we invaded at the Bridge of Dreams as they were packing up in the morning. We would leapfrog each other much of the rest of the day. Good. There were so many Amish or Mennonite people out this day, on bikes and horse and buggies, walking and even playing a large baseball game. We planned to stop in Kilbuck for lunch, but the spot was closed for the holiday. Instead, we rode onward to Millersburg for a burger. This is another of my favorite sections of the trail, and it magically lived up to its reputation for me again. After a brief stop in Fredericksburg, we had some road riding to do on empty country roads. After getting up the big hill, we came to the bus stop Airbnb, a cottage in the woods with a friendly owner, large pond, and unique rooms that were clean and comfortable. During this evening, we ordered DoorDash for dinner, and I spotted a couple small detours planned for the trail on the final day. I went to the OTET GPS page and updated my route for that last day. It was a relaxing evening. On the fifth day, we were out by 8:30 to make a 53-mile ride into Akron. The day started with rolling hills into Dalton, and then a mix of asphalt and gravel. I felt my trail legs coming into their own as we rode past farmhouses, fields, and cattle. At Dalton, I knew we made it through the hills, so we stopped to replenish and to breathe. It was nice to get to the trail again. Even if coming out of Dalton, the gravel was smoother than the asphalt. This rabbit, who I wish you could see better, led our way for what seemed like at least a half mile. We stopped at the top of the Viaduct restaurant just before crossing into Massillon. Homemade corned beef, great coffee, friendly service. Once into Massillon, we encountered the canal, which we would follow for much of the remainder of the ride. I'm looking forward to a few rides this year. Last year I circled Lake Erie, though my video card became corrupted. I've decided to circle all of the Great Lakes, so I'm planning to circle Lake Huron soon, and perhaps Lake Erie again, with a working video card this time. I might also go back to the CNO and Gap again, if not the Empire State Trail. The geese were congregating this day, with one mother targeting my father when he inadvertently rode between her and her children. Although I frequently receive warnings about the safety of the trail from Barberton through Akron, I've always found it to be one of my favorite sections. Great views and nothing to cause me to have any safety concerns. We made our way to the courtyard, where the check-in was smooth and the rooms were nice. We had dinner at the DBA, Dante's Akron restaurant, which is fantastic. I ordered duck, only because they didn't have goose on the menu. The rain was coming for our 6th day, a 43-mile ride to Edgewater Park in Cleveland. My father was eager to head out early in hopes of beating the worst of the rain. From what I saw, there would be no way around it. It wasn't supposed to be as bad in Cleveland, so once we got about 20 miles north of Akron, it should be lighter for the rest of the trip. We headed out at about 8 a.m., and eventually the rain came. Luckily, it wasn't storms, it wasn't heavy wind, but it was heavy rain. I couldn't keep up with keeping my camera dry, but my thoughts were more on my squishy wet socks and shoes that filled with each deep puddle. It did lighten as we made our way north into Cleveland. I find that when we are on our bikes, we're not defined by our careers, our families, our financial worth, education, or even politics in most cases. We are just young boys in old men's bodies, pedaling, riding, struggling, and coasting. Which is not to say that cyclists don't bring their own prejudices. Manual versus e-bike, recumbent, road bike, fat tires, racing, touring.
Hi. Hi. So this area is closed, obviously. We're shooting a movie down here. Now you can make it to Edgewater, I'm presuming that's where you're going.
Yeah.
You just have to go around on the city streets.
And yet, we all bring something different to the rides. Take in something different and take away a different experience. This ride was another great one. We didn't just make it through, we enjoyed it. We persevered through rain, but we also took in the sights, the places, the people, and the trail. Before I started touring, I was inspired by the videos of others of their rides. My singular purpose in creating videos of my rides is to encourage others to get out on the trails. Everyone has their own riding style, but ride your ride. Edgewater Park is the northern terminus of the OTET, and we made it there, where my son Alex was waiting to pick us up. We last saw his face when he dropped us off in Cincinnati 6 days prior, and we talked my father into getting a photo by the Cleveland Script sign, packed up, and headed home after another amazing 328-mile ride on the OTET.